In the heart of the galaxy, the Fourth Empire stood as a symbol of power. Its vast fleets, controlled by the young and ambitious Empress Saphira, stretched across countless star systems. At just 23 years old, she had already claimed the throne through sheer determination, cunning, and a ruthless desire to conquer. She ruled with an iron fist, her gaze sharp and unforgiving. Her every command followed without question. Yet, in the deepest shadows of the Empire, there was one figure who threatened her reign, a human named Soul Walker. Soul was no ordinary human. He was a symbol of resistance, a leader of a growing rebellion against the Fourth Empire. For years, he had outwitted and outmaneuvered her forces, always staying one step ahead. His name had become a legend among the colonies that refused to bow to the Empress. Despite the Empire's vast resources and advanced technology, Soul seemed to always slip through their grasp. No one knew where he came from, but his ability to organize, inspire, and fight had made him a thorn in the Empire's side. It wasn't that Saphira feared him now. Fear was for the weak. But the human's ability to disrupt her plans, to rally so many against her, was irritating. His very existence seemed to mock her authority. And so, after months of hearing his name whispered in the corridors of her empire, she decided to put an end to it. Capture him, Saphira commanded, her voice cold and decisive. Alive, if possible. I want him brought before me. Her advisors and military officers bowed respectfully, acknowledging the gravity of her order. Empress Saphira was not one to make idle threats, and when she gave a command, it was carried out with the precision of a well-oiled machine. The Empire's resources were vast, and its spies were everywhere. With a single order, Saphira knew her forces would fan out, searching for Soul Walker across the galaxy, following every lead, every trace of his whereabouts. But Soul Walker was clever, and Saphira knew that. She had no illusions that capturing him would be easy. As soon as her command had been given, her officers scrambled to organize the search. In the massive war room beneath the palace, holographic maps of the galaxy flickered to life. Each officer took their assigned region, and fleets were mobilized, dispatched to star systems where Soul's rebellion had been active. Saphira watched it all unfold with a calm, almost detached gaze. She had seen countless rebellions crushed under her rule, and this one would be no different. His influence is spreading too quickly, Empress, one of her generals warned. If we don't act fast, he could incite uprisings in multiple sectors. We need to find him before it's too late. Saphira nodded. Find him, and make sure that people know we will not tolerate disobedience. For days, the search continued. Empress Saphira's fleet scoured countless planets, scanning for any sign of the human leader. Yet, each time they came close, Soul vanished, leaving only the faintest trace behind. It was as if he knew every move they made. Every time the Empire thought it had him cornered, he slipped away like smoke in the wind. Then, one evening, as the stars flickered above the capital, the impossible happened. The palace's security systems detected an unauthorized ship entering the atmosphere. The ship was small, just a transport vessel, and it came without warning. A team of officers rushed to intercept, expecting a battle or at least a daring escape attempt. But to their shock, when the ship landed in the heart of the capital, the doors opened, and a lone figure stepped out. It was Soul Walker. He walked calmly, his posture relaxed, as if he had no fear in the world. His clothes were simple, worn, and patched, a stark contrast to the luxurious attire of the Fourth elites. He looked nothing like the fearsome rebel leader the Empire had been hunting for years. There were no weapons at his side, no guards, no elaborate plans for escape. He was just walking. Saphira stood in her throne room, watching the scene unfold on the massive holographic screen before her. Her brow furrowed in confusion, but she didn't speak. The security team outside the palace was ready to engage, yet no orders were given. She wanted to see what this human was planning. Soul Walker entered the grand hall of the palace without hesitation. His footsteps echoed through the marble floor, a steady rhythm that seemed to grow louder with every passing second. The guards, stationed throughout the room, tensed at his approach, hands hovering over their weapons. But still, no one moved to stop him. Saphira watched him through the viewports. He was in her territory now. The trap had been set. Every inch of the palace was secured, every exit monitored. He had walked right into her hands. "Is this a trap?" Saphira asked, her voice low and sharp, directed at the officers around her. "We're monitoring him." "Your Highness," one of them replied. "He's unarmed and appears to be alone. We've locked down the palace. He has no way of escaping." "I see," she said, narrowing her eyes. "Let's see what he wants," without a single word. She motioned for the guards to let him enter her throne room. Soulwalker made his way down the long hallway, passing through the intricate doors that led to the heart of the Empire. His calm demeanor never faltered, even as the eyes of every soldier in the palace focused on him. As he stepped into the throne room, Saphira stood from her throne, her regal presence filling the room. The Empress was a vision of power, tall and proud, her long silver hair flowing down her back. She gazed down at the human with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Well, she said, her voice cold and composed. "The infamous Soul Walker. I must say, I am surprised to see you here. I expected a fight." Soul simply smiled, unfazed by the tension in the room. "I don't believe in needless violence, Your Highness. I've come to speak." Saphira's eyes narrowed. "Speak? You've crossed into my palace, broken through my security, and you expect to speak?" "I've come to offer you something, Empress," Soul said, his voice calm yet confident. "A deal?" Saphira was intrigued. No one had ever dared to offer her anything. People feared her too much to even think of negotiating. And yet, here stood this human, offering her a deal like they were equals. "And what would you have to offer?" she asked, her voice tinged with both amusement and suspicion. Soul's smile widened, but there was something almost calculating in his eyes. "I have information that could make your empire stronger, but it comes at a cost." Saphira's mind raced. She had been hunting this man for years, but now he stood before her, unafraid, asking for an audience. Something about this situation felt different. She had spent countless resources and energy to capture him, and yet here he was, walking into her throne room as if it were an everyday occurrence. Her curiosity grew, but so did her suspicion. She had always trusted her instincts, and they were telling her that there was something more to this than met the eye. "I'll listen," she said, her voice cold and calculating. "But make no mistake, Soul Walker. If this is some sort of trap, it will be your last." Soul nodded, his eyes locked onto hers. "I assure you, Empress, I'm not here to waste your time." And with that, the first step of their unusual encounter began. The fate of an empire, a rebellion, and possibly the galaxy itself would be decided by the strange offer made by a human who had walked into the heart of the enemy's stronghold without a single weapon. Empress Saphira stood tall in her throne room, her eyes fixed on the man who had walked into her domain without a hint of fear. Soul Walker, the human who had been the source of so many headaches for her empire, now stood before her, looking as calm and collected as ever. The tension in the room was palpable, yet Soul seemed unaffected by it, his posture relaxed, his expression neutral but alert. The guards stood at attention, their weapons still drawn, but no one made a move. They all understood that this was not just any prisoner. This was the leader of a rebellion that had caused countless problems for the Vorth Empire, the human who had outsmarted their best officers and avoided capture time and time again. And now, he was here, standing before the Empress herself, offering nothing more than a calm smile. Saphira studied him carefully. His eyes, though calm, held something that intrigued her. There was a sharpness in them, an intelligence that wasn't just born of experience, but of something more, something deeper. It wasn't arrogance that she saw in him, but a quiet confidence, as though he knew something she didn't. It irritated her, but at the same time, it sparked her curiosity. "I don't have time for games, Walker," Saphira said, her voice cutting through the silence. "What exactly do you want?" Soul didn't flinch at her tone. He seemed entirely unbothered, which only added to her growing sense of unease. "I want to talk," he said simply. "There's no need for violence." No need for your empire to waste more resources chasing me across the galaxy. Saphira narrowed her eyes. You've been a thorn in my side for years, Walker. You think you can just stroll in here and offer me peace? It's not peace I'm offering, Sol replied, his voice steady. It's a choice. You're at a crossroads, Empress. Your empire is stretched thin. Your forces are spread across the stars, fighting wars you can't win. And every time you push, every time you crush a rebellion, another one pops up in its place. It's a never-ending cycle. I'm offering you a way out. Saphira's jaw tightened. She had always believed in the strength of her empire and the power of her will. To hear a human speak so confidently about the limits of her power was infuriating. And yet, he was right. In a way, the Fourth Empire was facing a growing number of rebellions. And the more they fought, the more they seemed to lose control. She had tried to maintain a tight grip on everything, but even she could see that it was starting to slip. Go on, she said, her voice colder now. What do you suggest? Should I simply surrender to you? Sol shook his head. No, you don't need to surrender. You just need to change your approach. The empire doesn't have to fall. It just needs to evolve. And how do you propose I do that? Saphira asked, her curiosity piqued despite herself. She had spent years building the Fourth Empire, expanding its reach, securing its power. But this human was speaking as though he knew a way to save it. You can't keep ruling with fear forever, Sol said, his gaze steady. The people of your empire are tired. They're afraid, yes, but they're also angry. The more you conquer, the more enemies you create, the more you suppress, the more resistance rises. It's a self-destructive cycle. Saphira clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. And what do you know of ruling an empire? She spat. You're nothing but a symbol of rebellion. A human with no understanding of what it takes to maintain order. Sol's expression softened, almost pitying. Maybe. But I understand one thing. People need more than fear to stay loyal. They need hope. They need purpose. If you give them that, you won't need to force them into submission. You'll have their respect. And with respect comes true power. Saphira stepped down from her throne, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as she approached Sol. You think you can teach me how to rule? She asked, her voice low but filled with growing menace. Sol stood his ground. I'm not trying to teach you, he said quietly. I'm offering you a chance to change, to be something more than just a conqueror. You can be remembered as a ruler who brought peace and prosperity instead of one who left a trail of destruction in her wake. Saphira was silent for a moment, studying him carefully. He was not pleading. There was no desperation in his voice. He was offering her something genuine, something she had never considered. Could she really change the way she ruled? Could she transform her empire into something better? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. A group of officers entered the throne room, their presence a reminder of the empire's strength and control. They looked between their empress and the human before them, awaiting orders. Your Highness, we have reports of unrest in the eastern sectors. One of the officers spoke, his voice filled with urgency. The rebellion is growing. It seems Soul Walker's influence is spreading faster than we anticipated. Saphira's eyes narrowed. I know, she said, her tone cold again. I have eyes everywhere. But I also know that what we've been doing isn't working. The endless battles, the suppression, it's all taking us further from victory. We're losing more than we're gaining. The officer looked confused. Empress, we've always crushed rebellions. We've always come out on top. And what have we gained? Saphira countered, her voice rising slightly. We've gained hatred, fear, but not loyalty, not true power. The room grew quiet as the officers exchanged uncertain glances. They had never heard their empress speak like this before. The idea of changing the empire's approach, of giving up the old ways of domination, was unthinkable to many of them. Yet, there was something in Saphira's eyes, something that suggested she was truly considering it. Sol took a step forward. It's not easy to change everything you've built, but it's possible. And it could be the difference between your empire's survival and its downfall. Saphira turned to face him again, her gaze hardening. And what do you want in exchange for this? Advice, Sol smiled, the first time he had shown any sign of emotion since entering the room. I don't want your throne. I don't want your empire. I just want a chance to show you how things could be different. She stared at him for a long time, weighing his words carefully. The rebellion had been a constant thorn in her side, and the longer it went on, the more she felt her grip on power slipping. Was it possible that the solution wasn't to crush the rebellion, but to understand it? She turned to her officers. Leave us, she ordered. I will speak with Sol Walker alone. The officers hesitated but obeyed, exiting the room and leaving the two of them alone. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was not uncomfortable. For the first time in a long while, Saphira felt something she had not expected, doubt. Tell me more, she said at last, her voice softer than before. Tell me what you think I should do. Sol's eyes gleamed with something like hope. He had come to challenge her, to show her the cracks in her empire, but now, it seemed like he was on the verge of something bigger, something even more dangerous for her empire. And as Saphira listened, she realized that this strange conversation might be the most important one of her life. The throne room was silent except for the low hum of the palace's advanced technology. The walls, adorned with shimmering metallic patterns, reflected the cool glow of the holographic screens that lined the room. Saphira stood, her hands clasped behind her back, her eyes never leaving Sol Walker. The human was calm, seated across from her, his posture relaxed, but his eyes burned with a sharp intensity that seemed to pierce through the air. For the first time in years, Empress Saphira felt uncertain. The rebellion had always been a threat, but it was one she believed she could easily crush. Her empire was vast, its fleet unmatched, its resources limitless. But Sol Walker had made her question everything. His words, his offer had unsettled her, and now, she could not shake the feeling that the path she had chosen for her empire might be leading her to ruin. Sol had told her to give him a chance, to listen to his ideas. And against her better judgment, she had agreed. She had given him the floor to explain what he believed was the key to her empire's survival. But there was something more to this conversation than simply agreeing or disagreeing. Saphira could sense that Sol was playing a game of wits, and she wasn't sure if she was the one being tested, or if she was testing him. I've already told you, Empress, Sol began, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, without hesitation. The empire is at a crossroads. You've built it through fear, through power, but that can only last for so long. People grow tired of being afraid. You need to give them something more, something they can believe in. Saphira's eyes narrowed. She was not used to being challenged, especially not by someone like him, a human, a species she had always regarded as insignificant. Yet here he was, in her throne room, speaking as though he understood her empire better than she did. And what exactly do you propose? She asked, her voice cold but laced with curiosity. What is it that you think I should give them? Sol smiled, but it wasn't a smile of arrogance. It was a smile of someone who knew something the other person didn't, a secret that could change everything. I propose a choice, he said simply. You don't have to rule with an iron fist. You don't have to crush every rebellion that rises. You can offer the people a chance to shape their own futures, to feel like they're part of something greater than just an empire of conquest. Saphira stared at him, her mind racing. This was madness. Her empire had been built on conquest, on dominance. There was no room for weakness, no place for compromise. The Fourth Empire had spread its influence through sheer force, and it had worked. But now, Sol was suggesting something entirely different, something foreign, something that felt dangerous. You want me to give them freedom? Saphira asked, her voice laced with disbelief. Do you honestly think I can rule an empire if I give them freedom? If I allow them to make choices for themselves? Sol leaned forward slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. I'm not saying you have to give them complete freedom, but think about it. Right now, your empire is like a machine, running on fear, suppressing anyone who dares to challenge it. But a machine that runs on fear can only last for so long before it breaks. If you give the people a sense of ownership, if you let them be a part of something bigger, You'll create a loyalty that doesn't come from fear, but from respect. Saphira's fingers twitched at her sides. She wanted to laugh. She wanted to throw him out of her palace and remind him that he was just a human, nothing more. But something stopped her. It was the way he spoke, the confidence in his words, the way he seemed so certain of what he was saying. It made her hesitate. "How do you propose we achieve this?" she asked, trying to keep the skepticism from her voice. "What do you think the people want? They want power. They want strength. They want a ruler who commands respect, not one who compromises." Soul's smile remained, but there was a flicker of something deeper in his eyes. "The people don't want power, Empress. They want purpose. They want something to believe in. If you offer them that, they will follow you willingly. They will fight for you because they believe in what you're building, not because they fear you." Saphira turned away, walking slowly toward the window. The view outside was breathtaking, with the sprawling city beneath her and the stars in the distance. For a moment, she allowed herself to really think about what Soul was saying. Could she lead in a way that didn't involve fear? Could she reshape her empire into something more than just a tool of conquest? She knew what it was like to fight for survival, to fight for power. She had done it since she was a child, and it had made her strong. But now, for the first time, she wondered if there was another way that didn't require constant fighting, constant destruction. Her thoughts were interrupted by Soul's voice, calm but insistent. "I know you're wondering if it's possible, if you can make this kind of change. I can't promise you that it will be easy, but I can promise you this: if you take this step, you'll never have to fight endless wars again. The people will fight for you because they believe in your vision, not because they have no choice." Saphira turned back to face him, her eyes narrowing with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. "And what do you want in return for all this wisdom, Walker? What's the catch?" Soul's expression remained unchanged. "I don't want your throne. I don't want your empire. I just want to see the galaxy change. I want to see the Vorth Empire become something greater than what it is." Saphira studied him for a long moment, unsure of what to think. She had built her entire life around the idea of power, absolute, unyielding power. She had conquered countless worlds, crushed rebellions, and ensured her empire's dominance across the stars. Now, this human was asking her to let go of all that, to trust in something unknown, something risky. "What's to stop me from killing you right here, right now?" she asked suddenly, her voice sharp. Soul didn't flinch. He didn't even seem to be afraid. "Nothing, if that's your choice," he said simply. "But then, you'll never know if I was right." Saphira's eyes widened slightly. There was something in his voice, something that told her he wasn't bluffing. He had come here, walked into her palace, and faced her without fear. He was a leader in every sense of the word, and for the first time, Saphira realized that he wasn't just a rebel. He was something more. "I'll give you one chance," she said, her voice colder now, her decision made. "One chance to prove that you're not just a pawn in a bigger game. But understand this, Walker, if you fail, I will crush you, and I will make sure the rebellion never rises again." Soul nodded. "I don't expect anything less." Saphira turned away, her mind racing with the implications of what was about to happen. This was a gamble, one that could either save her empire or destroy it completely. She wasn't sure which way it would go, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The night sky outside the palace shimmered with the endless expanse of stars, but within the walls of the grand hall, a heavy silence hung in the air. Soul Walker sat in front of Empress Saphira, the two of them separated by a table that seemed to symbolize the distance between them. The tension was palpable, as though the weight of the galaxy itself was pressing down on them. Saphira stood at the window, staring out at the vast city below. Her mind was racing. The conversation with Soul had thrown everything she believed about her empire into question. She had ruled for years with the unshakable belief that power came from domination, that the only way to keep control was through fear and force. But now, here was a human, someone she had once considered beneath her, suggesting that she could lead in an entirely different way. He had made her doubt herself, and that was something she had never allowed to happen. For the first time in her life, Saphira found herself unsure. Could she truly change her empire, abandon everything she had built, and turn it into something that operated on trust and respect instead of fear? Could she, Empress Saphira, the ruler of the Vorth Empire, really let go of her iron grip on power? Sol's voice broke through her thoughts, calm and steady. I can see you're thinking about it, Empress. You're wondering if it's possible to change. I'm not asking you to destroy everything you've worked for. I'm asking you to evolve, to guide your empire into something greater. Saphira turned to face him, her expression unreadable. And what if I fail? What if I can't change? The Vorth Empire has always been built on strength and conquest. It's the only way I know how to rule. Sol leaned forward slightly, his eyes locked on hers. You won't fail if you truly believe in what you're doing. And you don't have to abandon everything. You don't have to surrender your power. What I'm offering you is a chance to gain something greater: loyalty, respect, and a lasting peace. Saphira clenched her fists at her sides. She wanted to argue, to reject his words outright, but something inside her hesitated. She had always believed that power came from fear, but now she was being offered a different kind of power that came from understanding, from guiding people toward a common purpose. The idea was unsettling. It felt like it would tear her empire apart. The people won't accept this, she said, her voice colder now. They've been taught to fear me. They don't know any other way of life. If I change now, they will see me as weak. They will rise up against me. Sol shook his head. No, the people will follow you, Empress, if you give them a reason to. If you show them that you're not just a ruler, they'll see you as a leader, someone who cares about their future. If you continue to rule with fear, you'll only create more enemies. And in the end, you'll be the one who's alone. Saphira's heart pounded in her chest. She knew Sol was right. She had seen the signs: rebellions rising, factions splintering, the loyalty of her subjects beginning to waver. Fear could only hold people for so long. Eventually, they began to resist. She had built an empire based on strength, but in the process, she had forgotten one important thing: the hearts of her people. The sound of footsteps broke her train of thought. A young officer entered the room, his face tense with worry. Saphira looked at him, her gaze sharp. What is it? She demanded. The officer hesitated for a moment before speaking. Your Highness, there's been another uprising. It's in the western sector. They're calling it a rebellion against the Empire. They've already taken control of several key cities. Saphira felt a cold wave wash over her. Another rebellion? It seemed that no matter how many she crushed, there was always another one ready to rise. Her empire was crumbling, and the signs were clear. The very foundation of her power was beginning to crack. She turned away from the officer and glanced at Sol, who was still sitting quietly, watching her. He said nothing, but his gaze was understanding. She could see the wheels turning in his mind, and she knew what he was thinking. He was waiting for her to make a decision. Saphira took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The officer was still standing there, waiting for her response. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Her entire empire, everything she had built, was at risk. If she continued down the same path, the rebellions would only grow stronger. But if she changed, if she took a risk and followed Sol's advice, she could potentially save everything. But there was no guarantee. She would be stepping into the unknown, and that scared her more than anything. Send the message to the western sector, she said, her voice firm. I want that rebellion crushed. I'll deal with it personally. But she hesitated, the words catching in her throat. I want to meet with the leaders of the rebellion. I'll speak with them. The officer blinked in surprise. Your Highness, are you sure? They're openly defying your rule. They'll see this as a sign of weakness. Saphira turned to face him, her eyes steely. No, this is not weakness. This is something else. I want to see if there's a way to end this peacefully. The officer bowed and quickly left the room. Saphira stood in silence, her heart pounding. Could she really do this? Could she truly sit down with the leaders of rebellion and negotiate with them, instead of crushing them like she had always done in the past? Sol stood up, his eyes never leaving her. You're taking a risk, he said softly. I know, Saphira replied. But sometimes, a risk is the only way forward. I've ruled by fear for too long. Maybe it's time I try something different. The room fell into silence again as Saphira thought about what lay ahead. She was about to take a step into the unknown, to break with everything she had ever known. She didn't know if it would work, or if she would succeed. But she knew she couldn't keep going the way she had. If she wanted to save her empire, if she wanted to stop the endless cycle of rebellion and war, she had to change. The next few days were a blur. Saphira spent her time preparing for the meeting, making sure that every detail was in place. She would meet with the leaders of the rebellion in a neutral location, a small, isolated facility outside the capital. The room would be secure, but not too oppressive. She didn't want them to feel trapped. If she was going to build trust, she needed to show them that she was willing to be open. Sol was by her side throughout it all, offering advice and guidance. He was confident that this was the right step, but Saphira could see the hint of concern in his eyes. This was uncharted territory for both of them. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. Saphira stood at the entrance of the facility, her mind racing. She had no idea what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope. This could be the beginning of something new, or it could be the end of everything she had worked for. But no matter what happened, Saphira knew one thing for certain. The future of the Vorth Empire was in her hands. The small meeting room was dimly lit, with only a few flickering lights overhead. The air was thick with tension, as though the walls themselves could sense the weight of what was about to unfold. Saphira stood near the long table, her hands folded behind her back, her posture rigid. Yet her mind raced. She had never been in a situation like this before. A ruler meeting with the leaders of a rebellion. She had always been the one who sent armies to crush rebellions, never to speak with their leaders face to face. Today, she wasn't just the empress of the Vorth Empire. Today, she was a leader, taking a risk, trying to save her empire from tearing itself apart. The decision to speak with the rebels had been a difficult one, but deep down, she knew it was the right path. It had to be. The endless fighting, the endless wars had been draining her empire's strength. Something had to change. Across from her, the leaders of the rebellion waited. They sat in silence, their expressions wary but not hostile. Saphira didn't recognize any of them. They weren't the kind of people who would have dared to meet her in the past, but now, in this quiet room, they were all equals. At least, for the moment, Empress Saphira, one of the leaders said, his voice calm but firm. He was a tall, older man, with gray hair and piercing blue eyes. We're here because we believe there's a chance for peace. But make no mistake, we will not back down if your empire continues to oppress our people. Saphira nodded, her gaze steady. I'm not here to fight, she said. Her voice was firm, but there was a subtle hint of uncertainty beneath it. I'm here to talk. I understand that my empire has caused harm. I understand that my way of ruling has created enemies. But I want to offer you something different, a chance to end the bloodshed. There was a murmur among the rebels, some exchanged glances. Others stayed silent. The leader who had spoken leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. And why should we believe you? Your empire has crushed rebellions before. You've given us no reason to trust you. Saphira took a deep breath, steadying herself. This was it, the moment of truth. She had to make them believe that she was sincere, that her offer was not just a way to buy time. She had to convince them that this wasn't a trap. Because I'm offering you something more than just an end to the fighting, she said. I'm offering you a seat at the table. I'm offering you a voice in how this empire will be run. No more fear. No more oppression. We can work together, build something that benefits both the empire and the people. The rebel leader stared at her for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. The room fell into silence as the tension hung in the air. Saphira could feel the weight of the moment, the responsibility of it. She wasn't just offering peace. She was offering a complete change in how the empire had operated for centuries. If this didn't work, she knew the consequences could be disastrous. But if it did work, you want us to trust you, the leader finally said, his voice low but not unkind. You want us to believe that the Empress of the Fourth Empire, the woman who has caused so much pain and suffering, will suddenly change her ways? Saphira didn't flinch. I'm asking for a chance. I know I can't change the past, but I can change the future. We can change the future together. The rebel leader looked around the room, meeting the eyes of his companions. Saphira could see the skepticism in their faces, but there was also a glimmer of hope. They wanted to believe her, but they had been betrayed too many times before. What exactly are you offering? Another rebel leader spoke up. This one was younger, with dark hair and a fierce expression. How do we know you're not just trying to manipulate us? To weaken us before your forces come down on us again? Saphira's voice was steady. I'm offering you a place in the future of this empire. I'm offering you the opportunity to shape it. The old way, with endless fighting, will only lead to more destruction. But we can build something better. A government that listens to its people, that works for them, not against them. And we can start with you. The room was quiet again. Saphira could feel the weight of their gazes, each of them wondering if they could trust her. She understood their doubt. They had every reason to distrust her, to think that her words were nothing more than a ploy. But she couldn't change their minds with words alone. She had to show them that she meant it. She had to prove that she was willing to change. I won't ask you to lay down your weapons, she said, her tone more resolute now. But I'm asking you to give me the chance to prove that I can be the kind of ruler who brings about real change. I'll make the first step. I'll speak to the people. I'll show them that the empire can be something different, that we can work together for the benefit of everyone. For a long time, no one spoke. The rebel leaders exchanged looks, some more hopeful, others still unsure. Finally, the older man spoke again, his voice softer now. We're not fools, Empress. We know what's at stake. But if you truly mean what you say, if you're really ready to change, then we're willing to give you a chance. But understand this, if you betray us, if you go back to the old ways, there will be no going back. Saphira nodded, her eyes locked on his. I won't betray you. I give you my word. The tension in the room began to ease, though there was still a quiet wariness in the air. The rebel leader stood up, and the others followed suit. Saphira remained seated, her heart pounding, but a sense of calm began to wash over her. This was the beginning, the first step in a long journey, but it was a journey she had to take, no matter the cost. The rebel leader extended his hand, and Saphira took it. It was a simple gesture, but it held more weight than any battle she had fought. It was the first true act of trust between them. Let's see what we can build together, Empress, he said, his voice steady. Saphira stood, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of hope. She had taken a chance. She had chosen to believe that change was possible. The road ahead would not be easy, and there would be many challenges. But this was the beginning of something new. The beginning of a future where fear no longer ruled the galaxy. As the rebels left the room, Saphira turned to look out the window once more. The stars sparkled in the distance, as if reminding her of the endless possibilities before her. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that the empire could be more than just a machine of conquest. It could be a force for good, a beacon of hope. The Fourth Empire was changing, and she, Empress Saphira, would be the one to lead it into a new age.